Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed concluded he had been double-crossed and cheated by Muhammad Khan. He took out his cell phone and dialed the number of the travel agency the same day the South Indian woman arrived at Jeddah International Airport and claimed to be his beloved maidservant, Rayhana Khan. When the phone of Muhammad rang, he happened to be lecturing the two girls who supposedly fell sick purposely on the previous Saturday. Although the two girls brought doctor excuses, he refused to believe them and accused them of forging the medical documents. One of the two girls was crying and begging him to believe her. The other girl was weeping and waiting for the first girl to finish pleading her case so that she could also beg for mercy. Added to this dire climate was the absence of Jamal Khan. For 2 days, he had not called in or reported the reason for his being absent from work. His not showing up for the second day increased the merciless rage of the unforgiving boss. He had also quarreled with his wife at home after she accused him of having an affair with one of the girls in his office. The wife's accusation was based on practical evidence. For 3 weeks, he did not sleep with his wife even though she begged him to take her to bed and make love to her. Every day he pretended to be so damn tired and too tired for sex. On top of all this, he could not figure out what had happened to the real Rayhana Khan and her daughter. Mr. Muhammad Khan took out his cell phone and looked at the number that was calling him. He recognized the number to be that of Sheikh Ahmed and ignored the call. Then he heard the phone on his desk ringing. He told the Sudanese boy to go inside his office and answer his phone on the desk. He never trusted or allowed anyone to enter his office when he wasn't there except the Sudanese boy Babkar. Mr. Muhammad had spent a few years living in Saudi Arabia where he made some money and returned to India and invested in his own travel and recruitment business. During those years, he theorized that the most honest people in the Muslim and Arab world were the Sudanese. For that reason, he always trusted his Sudanese employee more than his Indian employees. That is why he sent Babkar to the airport in his place when his Bangalorean mistress suddenly showed up unexpected. The wicked boss enjoyed lecturing and torturing his employees, especially the female ones. He always looked for a justifiable cause to intimidate a female employee so that he could use it to blackmail her sexually. When a girl was put in that situation, she had either one of two choices: she could either voluntarily leave her job or entertain him inside his office. He was such an unscrupulous man he wouldn't hesitate to have sex with his female employees inside his office. One of the two girls he was lecturing was a new girl and she was very beautiful. From the day she started working at the travel agency, he kept searching for a way to manipulate her into having an illicit sexual relationship with him. This day she found herself in a most despairing situation and begging him to forgive her absence and not let her go. Her name was Bulbula. She was 21 years old and unmarried. She had a slim and medium stature with brown eyes and hair black as coal. The degenerate boss liked her from the very first day she came and applied for a job at his office. Here was his chance to take advantage of her since she failed to show up for work on Saturday. He was doing his best to frighten her into submission and ultimately leave her no choice but to please him sexually or lose her job. Every girl was employed for her beauty and what the evil boss could get in return. The only girl he got recruited, although she was very ugly, was the so-called beautiful girl. As a matter of fact, Jamila was a cousin sister to Mr. Khan's wife. So, it was his wife who compelled him to employ her relative. Otherwise, Mr. Muhammad Khan wouldn't allow that ugly girl to be a cleaner or a peon in his business. He didn't only hate Jamila, but he called her a pain in the ass. This is because Jamila was a secret spy on him. She always carried gossip to his wife. She was the one who told his wife that her husband has many affairs inside and outside the office. So while Muhammad was standing like the pharaoh of ancient Egypt and shouting at his two female employees and scaring the hell out of them, Babakir entered his office and answered the phone that was ringing on his boss' desk. Suddenly the voice of the Sudanese boy began to scream in a high pitch higher than the ear-deafening voice of his boss. No employee had ever raised their voice aloud in the office like this before. As if someone had suddenly switched on one of these new rap beats and turned the DVD player to maximum volume, the screaming voice of Babakir forced the disturbed boss to stop harassing the petrified young females and listen to what was going on inside his office. This was the second time in less than 3 days his amusement had been interrupted. Unfortunately, the Sudanese boy was shouting in Arabic and no one could understand what he was saying. Although the boss had lived a few years in Saudi Arabia, he could not make out the Arabic to understand what was being said by his employee or with whom he was speaking. His first reaction was to run to his office and snatch the phone from Babakir and choke him for daring to shout in his office and worse, scream at one of his most valuable Arab clients. Before he could turn his thoughts into actions, Babakir sprang like rocket fire out of Muhammad's office and broke the incredible news in front of everyone. Shall I say it was startling to say the least? So startling everyone stared at him in amaze. For a few seconds you could hear a pin drop. Babakir didn't know why they were not reacting, so he started squealing and squeaking all over again. The Sudanese boy said that Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed had called and said that an ugly Indian woman arrived at Jeddah International Airport and claimed to be his maidservant, Rayhana Khan. The woman had all the official documents of Rayhana Khan, which were issued by Muhammad Tours and Travels. Accordingly, Sheikh Ahmed was accusing Muhammad Khan of cheating him by sending a woman he had never seen before or chosen to be his maidservant. Muhammad could not believe what he was hearing and did not believe a single word Babakir was saying. He ran into his office and picked up the phone to speak to Sheikh Ahmed and inquired as to what had happened. Sheikh Ahmed began shouting at the top of his lungs into the ears of Muhammad every vile and disgusting word you can imagine. Surprisingly, although Sheikh Ahmed could barely say hello in Hindi, he did not leave one word unspoken of every single vulgar and degrading word he knew in Hindi and Arabic. Muhammad could not believe his ears. This angry Arab was making accusations against him, shouting derogatory and reviling insult after insult, calling him every filthy and disgusting name known to man. No one had ever risen to any level to speak down to Muhammad in any way or use such colorful and descriptive adjectives. He had never had someone rival him in his obnoxiousness. It was absolutely incredible. He thought for a moment maybe this was not Sheikh Ahmed screaming obscenities at him but someone had mistakenly dialed the wrong number. If by chance this actually was Sheikh Ahmed and he happened to be standing in front of this extremely outrageous stand-in, he would not hesitate to kill him. He even imagined he killed the old goat by grabbing a knife and stabbing him to death. And if he happened to have a gun he would not hesitate for 1 second to empty all its bullets in his brain. Sheikh Ahmed continued shouting at Muhammad for what seemed like forever until all of a sudden he lost his voice. Apparently due to a heart attack caused by his uncontrollable rage. Or he could have had a contusion of the brain or burst a blood vessel. Whatever the case, the phone went dead silent for several seconds. Muhammad waited a few more seconds and when he no longer heard this raving mad asshole of a man, he quickly disconnected the line. Once he put down the receiver, he could still hear Sheikh Ahmed's voice loud as 2 claps of thunder in an outpour of vulgarity and disrespect. Those words were forever etched inside his mind and nothing could ever erase them. Muhammad was a very proud man and that day his pride was shaken to the core. His pride could not shield him from the anger of Sheikh Ahmed's barrage of insults. The old Saudi not only insulted him and seriously injured his pride, but his insults reached Muhammad's dead mother in her grave and his wife in her house. Even the honor of his sister was not left untouched by the humiliation he endured from this wrathful Arab calling him in Hindi, Mother Chut and Bahan Chut, I will fuck your mother's vagina and screw your sister's pussy. During his many visits to India, the old Saudi learned nothing useful and polite from the Hindi language except filthy expressions. Those were fighting words and the ugliest insults an Indian could ever say to someone. A man would be inclined to extreme rage upon hearing such indecent things and feel the need to retaliate in word or deed. Only street people used that kind of filthy, vulgar language. After sinking in the devastating news and trying to overcome the unbelievable ignominy, Muhammad stormed out of his office as a mad lioness chasing away anyone that comes near her cubs. The first one he attacked in retaliation for his seriously damaged pride was the Sudanese boy. He called him every word he knew that would hurt him and even spat in his face many times. He scolded him for lying to him and then threw him out of his office and told him never to come back again. After that, he turned to his remaining 7 employees and shouted at them for no specific reason. He shouted and shouted until he began to cough violently. His coughing was so severe it forced him to stop shouting, and instead he started banging his hand on the table of one of the girls that happened to be near him. His glasses fell off his face and tears ran out the corner of his eyes. One girl ran and brought him a glass of water and handed it to him. After he gulped down the glass of water, his coughing stopped and his hand stopped beating the table. From there, a few minutes of quietness ensued from a day of never-ending chaos. The employees had never seen their boss this way before. They expected the next time he was able to open his contemptible mouth he would fire them all. All 7 employees were standing and trembling in fear like slaves standing before their taskmaster. At that crucial moment, one employee dared to open her mouth and speak in his direction. The other employees thought she had just secured a death sentence for herself or for a certainty about to lose her job. I'm sure you can guess who that employee was. Yes, that employee was Roxana. With her voice trembling, she said, "Sir, I think I know what happened to the maidservant." Instead of telling her to shut up, or saying "You're fired, get out of here," Muhammad, barely able to speak, said to her in a hoarse tone of voice, "Tell me, what do you think happened to Rayhana and her daughter?" "Sir, I believe that Jamal Khan convinced Rayhana not to go to Saudi Arabia and promised to marry her. And because she is in love with him she agreed, and then he perhaps took her ticket and visa and sold them to another travel agency. That travel agency sold the ticket and visa of Rayhana Khan to another Indian woman. And that woman—" "You are absolutely and perfectly right, Roxana," shouted the boss with the thick husky voice of an ogre. "Right now I want all of you to go to Jamal's chal and find out what he's up to. If you see that woman in his house, just give me a call and I know what I am going to do to him for double-crossing me and stabbing me in the back." The 7 employees began to prepare themselves for this spontaneous mission. All 6 girls gathered their handbags and emerged from behind their desks. The last man standing or young man was the first one to reach the door and emerge from it. The girls followed behind him one by one in succession as if they were students lining up for lunchtime in the school cafeteria. Before the last employee could step beyond the door frame, the conniving weasel with his voice crackling in spots changed his mind and shouted, "Wait a minute." The long line of female employees came to an immediate halt. Clearing his throat so he could be clearly heard, "Jamila must stay and answer the phones and finish some work here so it doesn't pile up." Since Jamila was the ugliest girl, no one doubted the boss' intention. Jamila came out of the queue and walked back to her desk and sat down on her chair. The other girls felt free to go. The boss changed his mind again and this time asked his favorite employee to stay behind too. He pretended to be requesting a favor of her rather than ordering her. "Bulbula," said the boss, in an endearing fashion and his vocal cords nearly intact, "can you also stay behind, dear, and help your sister Jamila with the workload and help her answer the phones?" Of course, the ugly Jamila wasn't the sister of the breathtaking beautiful Bulbula. The scheming son of Satan was religiously imposing a relationship between the 2 girls in order to hide his evil intentions. When his favorite female employee had returned to her desk and sat down, his demeanor changed and the wickedness of his mind switched back to normal mode. He shouted to the other employees and ordered them to go search until the ends of the earth, that son of a bitch, Jamal Khan, and that slum prostitute, Rayhana Khan. When I get my hands on them I will skin them alive and burn their bodies on a stake high enough to light up all of downtown Bombay. When the 5 couriers went about carrying out their fact-finding mission, they carried with them the heavy weight of death upon their consciences. The boss then returned to his office. He sat down on his oversized armchair and pressed the bell to call in the peon. The peon wasn't allowed to sit inside any of the two offices. He had to sit outside on a small stool. His duties were to respond whenever he heard someone ring the bell and do whatever he was told to do by the others. He also served as a guard and janitor cleaning the office. He had to come every day at 8 o'clock in the morning and clean both the front office of the employees and the office of the boss. He was a watchman, a janitor, and a peon doing the work of 3 people but only getting paid for the job of 1. That day, when the peon came in, Muhammad gave him 300 rupees and instructed him go buy him a bottle of Black Level whiskey. Black Level was a finer brand of Indian whiskey. There was a popular form of liquor in India called Darrow. Darrow was a cheap kind of bootleg liquor usually made in the shawls and slums and sold for very little. It was illegal to make Darrow, but some people in the shawls and slums take the risk. The bottle or container of this acid-like liquor had no label, so no one knew the exact percentage of alcohol in it. From its effects one could guess at least an alcohol content of 70 to 80%. With an alcohol volume that high, a person consuming even a small quantity of Darrow would lose his senses and behave like someone mad. Persons under the effects of Darrow you can find sleeping on the streets, near garbage bins, or just about anywhere. If you took off their clothes or ripped the skin off their flesh, they would not wake them up. It would be just as if they had been put under general anesthesia to undergo a serious surgery. Drunkards love to test their Darrow before they purchase it. There were 2 methods of testing Darrow. The first method is when the buyer asks for a half glass of Darrow from the seller and then he would throw the Darrow over his head. If 1 drop fell on his head, he wouldn't buy it. It is said the good Darrow is expected to vibrate immediately as soon as it had been flung into empty air. In the second method, the drunkard lights a match and exposes the quantity of Darrow to a small flame. If the Darrow shoots out like rocket fire when lit, then the Darrow passes the test with positive results and he would purchase it. Muhammad was a drunkard, but he did not drink Darrow. He was like other affluent Indians who believed that Darrow was for poor and uncultured people. He had never drunk alcohol inside his office, but today was different from any other day at the office. Harboring the humiliating insults of Sheikh Ahmed ringing in his ears and the misadventures of Jamal Khan and the so-called slum prostitute, he needed a drink to calm his nerves, and this self-help remedy would allow him the ability to begin repairing his injured pride. Besides that, he had an evil design developing in his corrupt mind, and only when he was drunk could he begin this carefully thought-out evil. When the peon brought him the bottle of Black Level liquor, he swiftly emptied 1/3 of it in his gut. Most of the drunkards in India like to drink their alcohol pure without mixing it. They believe that undiluted alcohol would give them a faster kick than a mixed one. When the sharer with demons emptied half the bottle of Black Level down his throat, his eyes became redder than red-hot chili peppers. He looked as though someone had punched him in the face, or he had been in a fight with Satan the devil and lost. Then, he came out of his office and pretended to be sorry for firing the Sudanese boy. The alcohol had given him a false sense of remorse and his mood changed from ugly to kind and courteous. Politely he requested Jamila go to the international student hostel and ask Babakir to come back to work. He even told her to apologize for him and say just how sorry he was. When Jamila took her purse and came out from behind her desk, Bulbula stood up and said to her boss, "Sir, can I go with her?" "Why?" Muhammad shouted at Bulbula, which caused her to jump backwards. "Are you a little girl afraid someone is going to come and steal you?" "I don't mean that, sir. I just thought you might allow me to go with Jamila." "And who is going to answer the phone calls if both of you go?" In fact, Bulbula was afraid to be left alone with this grotesque monster. She had heard from the other girls that he was a womanizer and cheating on his wife. He frightened her so by the alarming tone in his voice, she felt she had no choice but to sit back down in her chair and stay behind. Although, Jamila knew why Bulbula wanted to come with her, she did nothing to intervene and rescue the panic-stricken girl. The ugliness in her didn't show any sign of sympathy and couldn't care less about leaving Bulbula alone to be taken advantage of by a drunken lush. In the third world, there are 3 kinds of public institutions more dangerous to the populace than the 10 most wanted fugitives in the world. They are the teachers, the employers, and the police. As a matter of fact, if a suspect fell into the hands of the police, he would be beaten up and tortured to the point of death. In India, very often suspects were killed during interrogations. If the suspect happened to be female, she would be raped by the male officer who took her in for interrogation. Most of the school teachers, especially in male-dominated Arab countries, sodomize their young students. Some of them confidently boast about their evil acts among their just as wicked friends. They like small school boys who have yet to reach the age of puberty because they believe at that age the body of the male child is soft and supple like that of a female. Teachers are the least paid of all government employees. Most of them cannot afford to marry a woman, and for this reason, they go about satisfying their sexually frustrated desires by sodomizing their pupils. In strictly segregated social settings, there exists a huge gap between males and females. Most of the schools in Arab and Muslim countries have no co-education facilities where males and females study together in the same classrooms. This segregation of the sexes and other economic factors increase the resulting homosexual tendencies, which lead to young males being raped by their school teachers and older boys. Other operators of this moral decay are employers and business owners. They specialize in taking advantage of their lofty positions to harass those under their control. 90% of public servants and employers abuse those in their employ. This abuse of power, as we are about to see, is worse in the private sector than in the public sector. Muhammad had his own private business. Hence, he had no superior authority to give an accounting to or any chain of command whereby his employees could make or file a grievance or complaint. After Jamila had left, Muhammad returned to his office and drank some more from his bottle of Black Level whiskey. Then, he pressed the button of his peon bell and called him to come in again. When the peon came in, he told him not to allow anyone to enter into his office, and if anyone asked him the reason, he should tell them the boss was in a private meeting with an important Arab client. He also told him not to allow any of his employees to come in if they returned sooner than expected until he heard directly from him. As soon as the peon left, Muhammad picked up the phone receiver and dialed the number of Bulbula and ordered her to come to his office at once.